Genesis chapter 30. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister, and said unto Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, Am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And she said, Behold my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah her handmaid to wife, and Jacob went in unto her, and Bilhah conceived, and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, With great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. And Zilpah Leah's maid bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, A troop cometh, and she called his name Gad. And Zilpah Leah's maid bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, Happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest, and found mandrakes in the field, and bought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, Give me, I pray thee, of thy sons' mandrakes. And she said unto her, Is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, Therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him, and said, Thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. And God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived, and bare Jacob the fifth son. And Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and bare Jacob the sixth son. And Leah said, God hath endured me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun. And afterwards she bare a daughter, and called her name Dinah. And God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her, and opened her womb, and she conceived, and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, and said, The Lord shall add to me another son. And it came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said unto Laban, Send me away, that I may go unto mine own place, and to my country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served thee, and let me go, for thou knowest my service which I have done thee. And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. And he said, Appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. He said unto him, Thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was little which thou hadst before I came, and it is now increased unto a multitude. And the Lord hath blessed thee since my coming. And now when shall I provide for mine own house also? And he said, What shall I give thee? And Jacob said, Thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep thy flock. I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face, every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and brown among the sheep, that shall be counted stolen with me. And Laban said, Behold, I would it might be according to thy word. And he removed that day the he-goats that were ring-straked and spotted, and all the she-goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them into the hand of his sons. And he set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. And Jacob told him rods of green poplar, and of the hazel and chestnut tree, and pilled white strakes in them, and made the white appear which was in the rods. And he set the rods which he had pilled before the flocks in the gutters and the watering troughs when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle ring-straked, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob did separate the lambs, and set the faces of the flocks towards the ring-straked, and all the brown in the flock of Laban, and he put his own flocks by themselves, and put them not unto Laban's cattle. And it came to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger were Jacob's. And the man increased exceedingly, and had much cattle, and maidservants, and menservants, and camels, and asses. Summarizing chapter 30, Rachel envied Leah's ability to have children and blamed Jacob. Rachel did what Sarah did, telling her husband to sleep with her maid in order to produce an heir. Bilhah, Rachel's maid, gets pregnant twice. Leah saw that she had left bearing. She didn't leave bearing, she just wasn't getting pregnant right then, and gave her maid Zilpah for Jacob to impregnate, and she got pregnant twice. Reuben, Leah's son, from chapter 29, verse 32, bought Leah mandrakes, which are a type of plant. And Rachel asked Leah, could she have some? In verse 15, Leah's response to Rachel's request was, you've already taken my man. Now you also need my mandrakes? And Rachel responds by saying, okay, you can have Isaac tonight if you'll give me some of the mandrakes. So Jacob came home from work at the field in verse 16, and Leah said, you have to give it up. I've paid for you with my son's mandrakes. So Jacob obeyed. And in verse 17, Leah got pregnant for a fifth time. In verse 20, she got pregnant a sixth time. And then Leah says, God has prevented me with a good gift. That's what dowry means, a good gift, or, abundance. God has provided me with abundance. Now my husband will honor me because I had 6 sons for him. And then verse 21, Leah gets pregnant with Dinah. Verse 22, Rachel gets pregnant with Joseph. And in verse 23, she says, God has taken away my reproach. The New International Version, God has taken away my disgrace. Verse 25, when Rachel conceived, Jacob told Laban to send him away so he can go to his own country and give him his wives and children. You know how much I've done for you. Verse 27, Laban tells Jacob, please stay if you think I've been good to you, because the Lord blessed me because of you. How much money do you want? Name your price. Jacob says, you know how hard I've worked for you and how your flocks have grown because of me. You've been blessed because of me. When do I get to provide for my own household? And Laban again asks, what does Jacob want? Jacob says, let me get the spotted lambs and sheep, and that will be my wages. I'll care for your flocks again if you do this for me. And if you find any animals that are not spotted in my possession, you can consider them stolen. Verse 33. So Laban agrees in verse 34 and separates the spotted animals himself, gives his sons the responsibility to care for them, who took them 3 days away, while Jacob tended to the rest of Laban's flock. Jacob took these special tree branches, because that's all that is, the branches that are mentioned, special tree branches that were spotted and speckled, and put them in the flock's water supply, hoping that this would produce spotted offspring. Maybe his time with animals, he was able to see that pattern. But they began to produce spotted offspring, which he separated and kept them for himself. And what he started doing was taking these branches, when he saw the stronger animals, he would put them in front of the animals while they were mating. And their offspring would be strong animals that were speckled and spotted. So then those could be Jacob's animals. And he made himself rich off of that. So some highlights. Rachel envied her sister's ability to give Jacob children. Rachel envied her sister Leah's ability to give Jacob children. But Jacob loved her so much, he easily agreed to work 14 years for her hand in marriage. It says that Rachel was more beautiful and well favored in chapter 29, verse 7. A woman can have plenty. She can have the man and still be jealous of the next woman. Every woman has something that they can provide, or something that's unique and beautiful and wonderful about them. And beauty is such a big deal for us. But a woman can be noted as beautiful and well favored and still be jealous and still be unhappy that that's not enough for her to have. Jacob didn't love Leah. He was forced to be with her. And Leah was trying to win Jacob over with her womb. In verse 20, she says, I gave him 6 sons, now he'll honor me. And Rachel still envied the one thing that she could do, which is producing children. Fertility doesn't always earn the man's love, especially if the relationship wasn't freely pursued by the man. Leah was what Jacob had to do to get Rachel. And sometimes we will see women that a man, she's not someone he would have pursued if the circumstances were different. He would not have had Leah if the circumstances were different. But circumstances required him to marry Leah. Rachel did exactly as Sarah, giving Jacob her maid to impregnate, and she got pregnant twice. She could not compete with her sister directly, and Leah couldn't compete with her sister directly because she left bearing. So there was a time that Leah wasn't getting pregnant either. So to one up each other, and they couldn't do it themselves, so they got other people involved. And that's another thing to pay attention to. When two people are in conflict or two people are trying to one up each other, if they can't find where they can do it themselves, if they like being the ones that go back and forth and they can't for some reason, they will use outsiders or use other people, other people's bodies, other people's gifts, blessings to one up someone else. So that's something to pay attention to with human behavior. Leah's situation is absolutely messed up. In chapter 29, verse 17, she was not considered beautiful the same way her sister was. And then chapter 29, verse 25, she was forced to marry a man who loved her sister. In 29, verse 31, Jacob hated her. And she got into this thought pattern thinking that pregnancy would win Jacob's love. Verse 32, when she had Reuben, she said, how my husband will love me. In verse 34, when she had Levi, she said, now my husband will be joined with me because I gave him 3 sons. Verse 14, Reuben, Leah's son, found mandrakes. Rachel wanted some, and Leah had to pay to have Jacob. Pay to have her turn with Jacob, and then she got pregnant 2 more times. Every woman who's been barren so far conceives later on in the story. Rachel got pregnant with Joseph in verse 23-24. Leah left bearing in chapter 30, verse 9, but then she got pregnant 2 more times. The woman's body is wonderfully mysterious. The word barren should only be used as the definition that should be the most popular for barren is has not produced instead of incapable of producing, because that's so far every woman that's been said that they're going to be barren. Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, they all ended up having children later, and healthy children. Jacob wants to leave when Rachel conceived, struck deal with Laban to take the spotted animals, and used a branch around the animals to influence reproduction. And then verse 16, Leah began bearing again after giving mandrakes, a plant, to Rachel. So there's some importance here of plants and reproduction. because with the animals, the branches help Jacob be able to reproduce differently, but then he put the branches in their water supply. I'm going to Google what a mandrake is for. I should have done this beforehand, but just... Oh, it's a powerful narcotic, hallucinogen. It can easily lead to death, but it's for a pain-killing plant. Sleep-inducing and painkiller. And it shrieks when it's uprooted. It's a mere legend. Oh. Oh, supposed fertility power. So that's another thing, fertility power. But I just said that. Plants having a something to do with reproduction, healthy fertility through using the herbs on Earth. So that is a summary of Chapter 30.